So I went out to lunch today with my wife and kids, which is a huge blessing. Don't get to do that every day. And while we're eating lunch, I told my daughter to stop messing around and to begin eating her food a little bit quicker because we're on a timed lunch. And she's like, "What? We're on a timed lunch?" I said, "Yeah, I'm on my lunch break. Every employer gives their employees a certain amount of time for lunch, and you just have to be back at the end of that time." And she said, "Well, that's not fair." And I thought about that phrase and the danger of that phrase, "that's not fair." You see, one of the greatest keys to unhappiness is the comparison game. Some have said that the root of unhappiness is comparison. If you want to be discontent with the home that you live in, go check out a model home in your community, or go look at the Joneses' home in your neighborhood, if you will. The comparison game will completely destroy and steal your joy, which is what the enemy wants to do. Instead, let no unwholesome word proceed from your mouth, but only such a word as is good for edification. Ephesians 4:29. Let no unwholesome word come out of your mouth. Or you look at 1 Thessalonians 5:18. Be thankful in all circumstances, for this is the will of God for you. God's will for you is to be thankful in all circumstances. So each time you utter unwholesome words, or you start to play the comparison game, or you start to be unthankful, it's going to make you more unthankful and more miserable, and that doesn't seem very wise. If you know comparison is going to make you miserable, and whining and complaining and talking about the difficulties of things going on in your life is going to make you miserable, and the Bible says not to do it because it's not God's will for your life to be unhappy. And if you really think about it, God is sovereign over everything, and when we are complaining about what we've been given or our circumstances, then we're really complaining against God and saying, "God, I don't think you had the best plan for my life. Maybe you should have done things a little bit differently." I think of the parable in Matthew 20 of the guy who owned some land. He had a vineyard, and let's modernize it a little bit. Let's say the guy owns a scrap yard, and he needs some workers, so he goes over to Home Depot at early in the morning, and he says, "Hey guys, I'll give you $100 to work today." And in the Bible story, it's one denarius, but he says, "I'll give you $100 to come and work at my scrapyard today. Do you want to come and work for me?" And they say, "Sure, let's go." So they begin working, and he goes back to Home Depot again later in the day to see if there's more guys ready to work, and there are, and he says, "Let's go, come on." And then he goes back later, and then he goes back later. He goes all the way multiple times throughout the day, and each time he offers the guys $100 to come and work at his vineyard or his scrapyard, and he says, "Do you want to come? I'll pay you $100. And they say, "Sure." So at the end of the day, when he goes to pay everybody, the first workers come, and they get one denarius, and the guys that came at 11 o'clock, or the very 11th hour of the day, they also get the one denarius, or the $100 that they were promised. And the guys that had been working all day began to grumble and complain. They would have been totally content with their wage that day, and they, in the morning, had agreed to that wage happily, that they were able to work and get paid that wage. And then at the end of the story, they're miserable because somebody else got something different than them. They said, "That's not fair." That is a really dangerous game to play, but if you want to be miserable, I highly recommend the "that's not fair" game. Otherwise, maybe consider thanking the Lord in all circumstances and see what kind of joy will be brought into your life.